a foundation for inclusive and resilient futures. The side event, part of the Global Refugee Forum Progress Review. The voices we've heard so far from refugees, from member states, and from all our partners point in the same direction. The way we respond to displacement has to evolve. An estimated 117 million people are displaced by conflict and persecution and climate-related shocks. And increasingly layered on top of those drivers are the climate shocks. What was supposed to be temporary fixes, and in many places, it has become semi-permanent realities. Camps have played a crucial role in saving lives at the height of emergencies. But as years go by, sometimes decades, they often stand in the way of something more fundamental. Freedom of movement, access to work, to national services, to a sense of belonging. If we do not make a deliberate shift now, we'll continue to invest in systems that are hard to finance, difficult to manage, and insufficient for the kind of dignified, sustainable responses we say we want. More importantly, it does not offer displaced people a real chance to rebuild their lives and livelihoods. This is why the Sustainable Human Settlement Pledge, launched by the government of Ethiopia and UN Habitat at the 2023 GRF, is so important. With 53 pledges already made to date, this initiative aims to transform camps into inclusive settlements, integrate refugees into national development plans, and ensure access to services, livelihoods, and climate resilient infrastructure. The pledge also aspires to a different emergency response model, with refugees being able to settle in locations that allow them to contribute to local economies and societies. In order to unpack the complexities of sustainable human settlements for refugees and their host communities, this side event is designed around two panels. In the first part, we will hear from member states who are already translating this vision into reality. Countries such as Kenya, Mauritania, Ethiopia, Rwanda, alongside partners from refugee-led organizations and private sector, also continue to making such change possible. The second part of the event will look into the future, drawing on insights from recent deep dive in Nairobi on sustainable human settlements organized by the World Bank, UN Habitat, and UNHCR. We will also hear from member states presentations including Chad, Rwanda, Cameroon, and Mali as they chart the next steps towards inclusive and resilient human settlements in their respective countries. Before we begin, Mr. Zedu Bedera Debele, advisor to Ethiopia's Refugee and Returnee Service, who was part of the Nairobi deep dive, will deliver welcome remarks through a video recorded message on behalf of the co-leads, the government of Ethiopia and UN Habitat.
Excellencies, distinguished guests, colleagues, I'm honored to welcome you on behalf of the government of Ethiopia and the UN Habitat as the co-leaders of multi-stakeholder framework, sustainable human settlement for refugees and host communities at this critical level where we celebrate progress and shape the path forward. The world faces unprecedented displacement crisis. By mid-2024, 123 million people were forcibly displaced, with two-thirds displaced over 5 years. This reality demands a shift from short-term humanitarian response to sustainable solutions that strengthen resilience for both refugees and host communities. The Sustainable Human Settlement Pledge, launched at 2023 Global Refugee Forum, is a milestone in this direction. Its vision is clear: transform camps and displacement areas into climate resilient, inclusive human settlements. Today, 53 pledges have been made by government, private sector, and NGOs that are framed around 6 thematic priorities. This includes urban planning, policy legislation and governance, housing and shelter, basic services including water, sanitation, energy, and quality, and economy and finance, as well as environment. But place alone are not enough. Operationalization is key. And this is where our recent deep dive on sustainable human settlement, hosted by UNHCR, UN Habitat, and the World Bank in Nairobi, comes in. It compares six countries, including Ethiopia and larger colleagues from a number of those countries are part of today's cycle. The deep dive organized to identify practical steps of area-based planning, municipal leadership, and innovative financing models, including climate finance and private sector. The deep dive confirmed that sustainable human settlements are not just about infrastructure, but they are about governance, economic inclusion, and resilience. These are the foundation for moving from dependence to dignity, from camps to community. Let us take this moment from this progress review meeting and the insights from the deep dive and turn into action. We must scale up integrated planning, unlock diverse financing streams, and strengthen the leadership of our municipalities. Countries are moving from place to action. Ethiopia's Market Roadmap and integrated plans in Kariba Cycle. Kenya's Shrika Plan, Mauritania's Membala Camp are transforming camps into integrated cities. These efforts are supported by donors including Denmark, Germany, and Switzerland, as well as the Greenfield Foundations and many others. And today, we are pleased to welcome new partners in the table, including Cameroon and Rwanda, bringing ambitious commitments aligned with the pledge objectives and ready to scale up sustainable solutions and integrated approach. Excellencies, distinguished guests and colleagues, if we work together, we can make inclusive human settlements a reality, anchoring stability, reinforce social cohesion, and drive shared progress for forcefully displaced population and post-conflict settlements. We also invite new contributions and call on donors to support this initiative. I thank you. Excellent.
Thank you, Mr. Pedera. To begin our first session, we will now explore ongoing successes in advancing the Sustainable Human Settlements Agenda. So it's my pleasure to invite Mr. Aragon Daido from Kenya to share his perspectives. Mr. Daido brings a unique viewpoint on transforming refugee camps in Kenya through the Shrika Plan. He currently serves as a planner and reserves area lead for the Coast 2 window for host communities and refugees at the State Department for Housing and Urban Development. So a specific question for you, Mr. Daido. Kenya has been taken a pioneering role through the Shrika Plan in the establishment of new municipalities in Kakuma and Dadaab, making a significant transformation of 30 years old refugee camps. What lessons can Kenya share with other countries seeking to undertake a similar approach, particularly regarding integrated planning and the role of local municipalities?
Thank you, Sajad. Distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I am pleased to join you today for this discussion on the sustainable human settlements as foundations for inclusive and resilient futures. This forum gives us a chance to reflect on the pledge that we all made as stakeholders and share our progress so far. Ladies and gentlemen, during the second Global Refugee Forum in 2023, Kenya joined the multi-stakeholder pledge on climate resilience, sustainable human settlements for refugees and hosting communities by pledging to develop and roll out the Shrika Plan for refugees and host communities. Shrika Plan is Kenya's pioneering approach in refugee management aimed at supporting socioeconomic inclusion for both refugees and host communities. This is in order to make them self-reliant and resilient. Through the Shrika Plan, Kenya aims to transform refugee camps into integrated host and refugee settlements. The Shrika Plan takes a whole of government and whole of society approach and is anchored on the following pillars. One being systems building and enabling policy frameworks. Two being the access to integrated services such as wash, education, healthcare, agriculture, and housing. Three being human capital and skills development. Four being the national resource management and climate change. Sustainable economic development and durable solutions and complementary pathways. Ladies and gentlemen, to pave way for infrastructure development and investments in refugee hosting areas, we as a country have chartered 2 refugee hosting areas as municipalities. This move is a bold step towards creating sustainable, integrated human settlements for both host communities and our brothers and sisters who are victims of conflict and violence. Kenya, through the World Bank WHR financing, is currently seeking to strengthen capacities of the urban institutions in these far-flung areas of Dadaab and Kakuma to support the transition of refugee camps into integrated host community and refugee settlements. By equipping these municipalities with the appropriate technical and financial capacities for the provision of resilient urban infrastructure and services, as well as planning and development control tools. Ladies and gentlemen, Kenya's success stories on this page can therefore be summarized by the following interventions undertaken so far. One being that as a country, we launched the Shirika Plan in 2025. And like I said, this is the government of Kenya framework that aims to enhance social economic inclusion for refugees and host communities. Secondly, so far we've chartered the municipalities of Dadaab, Hagadera, and Kakuma. This was done in 2023. Then thirdly, we have included refugees and refugee voices into integrated development planning of these municipalities, whereby every quarter the municipalities, in order to run their affairs, they hold what we are calling citizen forum. And in these fora, the refugees are also represented in the forum. We've also gone a step ahead and included the camp managers as part of the municipal board. And this is in an effort so that the refugee voices can also be heard within the decision-making organs of the municipalities. Currently, capacity building efforts are underway with the municipalities gearing up to take up the provision of integrated services such as wash and solid waste management. We are in talks with development partners to see how this transition can happen to the municipality, because we are looking at the municipality as the next step as we talk about development planning, in as much as we are moving from the humanitarian aid development models. Then finally, and I think this is going to be good news to the donors and the development partners. As a country, we are embarking on changing the land tenure system of these refugee hosting municipalities. And this is because we realized, because the tenure system of the municipalities is majorly community land, we're looking into converting these areas into public land. This will unlock further land for public investments and as well as easing the steps of investing. Good people, to further strengthen their achievements, it is prudent that we undertake the following. One, all humanitarian development, partner and private sector players should align with national and local government priorities through development planning. And this, we usually say that when the tune changes, so does the dance. And in realization of this, now that we are moving from a humanitarian-based model to a development model, because we are supporting these municipalities into undertaking development planning, spatial planning, whereby these are going to be the foundations of how the municipalities move into the future. What we are looking into is for all partners in the space to be able to, one, come in as these municipalities are undertaking the planning, so that any partner who is interested in whatever sectors of the plans, they can be able to chip in. Then finally, during the implementation, and I think this is a good opportunity that we have, because government is finally looking into these areas and leading the step. So the rest of the partners, if we on board onto what government is doing and fit into different aspects of the development planning that we intend to undertake in these areas, then we are going to have a wholesome approach to others. Then, as a country, we are embracing the whole of society, whole of government approach towards integrated development planning of refugees and host communities. And this is so that we ensure that we have all hands on deck. No one is left behind. Finally, we need to invest in big tickets, big impact items that will have ripple effects in stirring up the urban economies of these municipalities, as well as build resilience for human settlements. This is brought about by the fact that as government, we realize that we were playing catch up with these refugee hosting areas. And in order to catch up, we need to invest in big ticket items because such as, for instance, trunk infrastructure, trunk sewer, so that in as much as we are all coming together, then we can be able to streamline and build the resilience of these municipalities. Because we're looking at the municipalities as the centers for development. No matter who's in that municipality, whether a refugee or host community, we are all residents of the municipalities. As I conclude, I'd like to challenge this forum that this is not only about building settlements, but also about building resilient futures for both host and refugee communities. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ergun. Kenya is certainly leading the discussion through the Sharifa plan, and thanks for sharing those insights. I now turn to Mr. Sheikh Abdullahi Ewa. He's the coordinator of the Port Sharqi Development Unit in Mauritania. Mr. Ewa was also with us in Nairobi, and he has extensive experience in decentralization, regional planning, and has played a key role in overseeing development projects that benefit both refugees and host communities, the region that hosts the vast majority of refugees in Mauritania. Mr. Ewa, the question for you: in 2023, the government of Mauritania committed to transforming the Mbera camp into a sustainable human settlement, while generously keeping open borders to new Malian refugees. What were the considerations that led to changing the approach to refugee reception, and what were the key factors that prompted you to adopt a more inclusive approach in the localities of Port Sharqi from the outset, as well as the transformation of Mbera?
Merci beaucoup, M. Malek. Donc, bonjour tout le monde. Excellences, Mesdames, Messieurs, chers collègues. Donc, au nom du gouvernement de la République islamique de Mauritanie, permettez-moi d'abord de commencer par remercier la SR pour l'organisation de cet événement important qui nous rassemble aujourd'hui autour de l'engagement multipartite sur les installations humaines durables et intégrées, adaptées au climat, lancé lors du Forum mondial sur les réfugiés 2023. Cet engagement est essentiel pour répondre aux besoins des réfugiés tout en favorisant la cohésion sociale et le développement durable. Au cours de la dernière décennie, la Mauritanie a démontré que l'inclusion n'est pas seulement une aspiration, c'est une nécessité. C'est une véritable nécessité pour la stabilité, la résilience et un progrès partagé. Actuellement, la Mauritanie accueille l'une des plus importantes situations de réfugiés dans le Sahel. Plus de 300 000 réfugiés sont dans le pays, en grande majorité dans la vaste région du Port de Sharqi au sud-est de la Mauritanie, dans le camp de réfugiés de Mbera, mais aussi dans beaucoup d'autres localités autour du camp, dans la région, où il dépasse parfois le nombre des populations locales. La proportion des réfugiés actuellement dans la région est de plus de 45%. Donc la plupart des réfugiés sont bien évidemment des femmes et des enfants. Ces réalités font que l'inclusion n'est plus un choix, mais une nécessité pour la stabilité, la résilience et le progrès partagé. Notre vision en Mauritanie est claire. Il nous faut transformer le camp de Mbera en une installation humaine, durable, intégrée aux systèmes nationaux et résiliente face au climat. Pour cela, nous avons franchi des étapes extrêmement importantes. D'abord, en matière d'urbanisation et d'aménagement. Nous avons élaboré de manière inclusive un schéma directeur d'aménagement urbain du camp dans son environnement urbain. Ce schéma a été fait de manière inclusive et actuellement il est en cours de validation. Aussi, nous sommes en train de connecter le camp au réseau électrique national dans une logique d'aménagement inclusif. Aussi, pour le secteur de l'eau, des installations importantes ont été faites en matière d'accès des populations réfugiées à l'eau et à l'assainissement. Et un projet est en cours avec la Banque mondiale et le gouvernement. Dans le secteur de la santé, l'inclusion est déjà effective, il est acquis. Donc actuellement, tous les réfugiés du camp, même hors camp, sont inclus dans le système national de santé. En matière d'énergie, un projet de solarisation des forages, l'utilisation du solaire dans les forages est actuellement en cours, afin d'assurer une alimentation durable et autonome en énergie. Concernant la protection sociale et l'inclusion, vous avez suivi ce matin certainement la présentation qui a été faite à ce sujet, mais les réfugiés bénéficient actuellement d'une égalité de traitement dans les transferts monétaires avec les populations hautes grâce à l'alignement sur le programme de Kaboul. L'inclusion aussi progressive, actuellement, elle est en cours dans le système national d'assurance sociale. Pour l'état civil et la documentation, le service de l'agence gouvernementale d'état civil est opérationnel dans le camp pour favoriser justement la délivrance des documents officiels et ainsi pour garantir l'inclusion administrative des réfugiés. Actuellement, tous les réfugiés qui sont enregistrés bénéficient des numéros nationaux d'identification qui permettent de l'inclusion administrative. Dans le secteur de l'éducation, l'intégration des enfants réfugiés est en cours. Actuellement, nous sommes en train de passer au curriculum national pour ce qui est des enfants réfugiés au niveau du primaire, avec un objectif pour le finaliser avant fin 2017. Aussi, pour la préservation des ressources naturelles, des programmes de reboisement. Vous savez, la présence des réfugiés dans le camp a eu un impact extrêmement important sur la dégradation de l'environnement dans la zone. C'est pourquoi les réfugiés et les populations contribuent non seulement au reboisement, mais aussi à l'extinction des feux de brousse dans cette région. Beaucoup d'hectares ont été reboisés et actuellement aussi des activités de maraîchage sont en cours, menant incluant les réfugiés avec les populations. Donc toutes ces actions, unies sur l'engagement du gouvernement mauritanien à opérationnaliser le nexus humanitaire développement-paix, en renforçant la cohésion sociale entre réfugiés et populations hautes, aussi en transformant le camp en un moteur de développement local. Pour nous, la présence des réfugiés dans la région est certes un défi, mais aussi doit être une opportunité. C'est pourquoi, ensemble, nous ouvrons non seulement la transformation du camp, qui est un engagement pris en 2023 et sur lequel on va pouvoir avancer, mais aussi sur la mise en œuvre d'approches intégrées humanitaires de développement et de paix. Et ces efforts visent bien sûr à accompagner la sortie progressive des situations de crise et renforcer la résilience tant au niveau des réfugiés que des communautés. Le gouvernement mauritanien, avec l'appui de ses partenaires, notamment l'ACR, souhaite lancer un pacte quinquennal pour le développement socio-économique de la région de Haute-Châtie pour la période 2026-2030. Ce pacte vise à traiter les enjeux transversaux comme l'urbanisation du camp et des localités voisines et présenter un fonds uni avec les agences des Nations Unies, les acteurs humanitaires et de développement en soutenant le gouvernement. Cependant, beaucoup de défis persistent, comme le manque de financement, la coordination intersectorielle entre les acteurs. Nous appelons la communauté internationale à renforcer la solidarité et le soutien financier afin de garantir ce projet d'ici la fin 2027, conformément à l'entreprise. Ensemble, nous pouvons faire du camp de Mbera un modèle d'urbanisation durable, garantissant aux réfugiés et communautaires un avenir résilient et inclusif. Je vous remercie.
Thank you very much for this powerful engagement that you're doing in Mauritania. And we continue bringing these lessons to the international forum as well. Thank you very much. I now turn to Ms. Hani Teshome, who joins us today, sitting next to me, on behalf of the government of Ethiopia. So over to you.
Thank you, Sajad. Good afternoon, everyone. Ethiopia is honored to co-lead this multi-stakeholder collaboration with UNHCR. We believe refugee settlement should not remain a place of staying, but waiting, but in a place of opportunity, dignity, and shared development. In connection to this, Ethiopia committed in 2023 to transform two refugee camps, Kabibeya and Asahibita, into refugee camps into sustainable urban settlements aligned with the master plans of neighboring towns. This place reflects Ethiopia's broader transition from emergency refugee camps to inclusive, resilient settlements that are fully integrated into local development systems. Since 2022, all new refugee settlements in Ethiopia have been designed with inclusion from the outset, aligning humanitarian response with long-term urban and local development planning. This approach is already being implemented in Adam Watch for Eritrean refugees, Mirkan for Somalia refugees, and after Tandura for Sudanese refugees. Over the past 2 years, our GRF progress has focused on asylum camp Gariweya, which has been a refugee camp for 30 plus years. And Ethiopia has been focusing on housing and infrastructure, climate responsive housing and settlements layout aligned with nearby towns, basic services, utility managed inclusive water systems, solid water management, and integrated health and education service, now linked to local government systems, livelihoods and inclusion, owner-driven construction models that create skills, income, and jobs, especially for youth and women. This intervention moved communities from dependency towards self-reliance while strengthening also the host communities. We also have laid strong institutional foundation. We have signed an MOU between the MOU was signed between our base, UNHCR and UN Habitat. Urbanization roadmaps and special profiling has been done. Housing pilots for climate resilience and inclusive design. However, challenges remain, particularly gaps in context-specific housing plan and property rights, and then the need for stronger national level coordination. Looking ahead to 2026 and 2027, Ethiopia will focus on 5 priorities. 1, a coordinated national implementation roadmap. 2, area-based evidence-driven planning. 3, capacity building for local governments. 4, original coordination platform. 5, innovative, market-based housing solutions linked to livelihoods and resilience. Our approach is informed by lessons from the Nairobi deep dive on sustainable human settlements in FCD context. The key takeaway was sustainable settlements are not just about infrastructure, they require governance, economic inclusion, climate resilience, and strong social services. These insights are now being integrated into Ethiopia's national and regional planning frameworks. In conclusion, Ethiopia remains fully committed to transforming Gariweya and Asaika into a sustainable urban settlement, and we call on development partners, donors, and technical agencies to join us with financing, expertise, and innovation to scale resilience solutions that serves refugees, host communities, and national development goals.
Thank you very much. Ethiopia has been the driving force behind the Sustainable Human Settlement pledge here in Holy, one of the countries that with the most ambitious and transformative agenda that we're looking at it. So thank you very much for the update. We now turn to Ms. Grace Doron. She's the Executive Director of Root Generations and a refugee herself. She brings a personal and powerful voice to this discussion. Before this session, we're having a discussion with Grace. She lived in Kakuma camp for over 15 years as a refugee. And before returning South Sudan, she has since become a leading advocate for climate action, gender equality, and the rights of displaced persons, recognized among Africa's 100 most influential women in 2025. Ms. Doron leads programs that empower women and displaced communities. So a question for you, drawing on your experience of living in Kakuma for 15 years, what changes would help make Kakuma more integrated and more resilient for the people who call it home, some for decades? And looking ahead, what should be done at the start of a refugee response to help create settlements that work well for both displaced people and host communities?
Thank you. Thank you, Malik. Thank you, everyone who's here. I'm glad to be part of the Sustainable Human Settlement as a foundation for inclusive and resilient futures. Just to say the least, I would really say that, based on his question, the first part of the question, I would say that just make the camp a home. Make Kakuma a home for the people. I've been staying in the camp for over 20 years. And every time you will hear our foster parents will say, hey, don't put your school back there because we're going very soon. So it's always a place of temporary settlement. So making it a home will create a more, what we call less traumatized human being on earth. Making Kakuma a home can be done through so many things. I'm glad to sit here with a representative from the government of Kenya, and I would say that the policy shift, the property ownership through Kenyan Refugee Act 2021 will make Kakuma refugee camp a better place. And basically, we will not call it a camp. Please make it a home, make it a town, make it a municipality. Let it be a town of equal benefits for both refugees and host communities. There is also a lot of backlog. Recently, there have been a lot of shifts that from a certain stage of living to another, and those shifts create a lot of backlog in terms of registration. So we encourage you that to initiate the registration to clear the backlog, give the people back their dignity and resilience that they deserve in the camp. Secondly, the shared responsibility in terms of design, co-design. You know, refugees are not people that lacks a certain way of life. You find people in refugee camp, you find pilots, you find doctors, you find this, but they're confined in that environment without the space to give back or to offer their services. These are people who can contribute 100% to the economy of that country. So they are not just people to be enclosed in that environment. Second to your question, how better could that be? I would say that integrated settlement is a better approach. Both the displaced and host communities should live together, mix up the people for the peaceful state. We have had a lot of eruptions of conflicts in these camps because people are being isolated, like put based on the tribal lines, based on the country of origin. This has created a lot of spark in conflicts in the camps. Recently, we lost almost more than 55 people in the camp because of that way of settlement. Secondly, having equal employment opportunity for the people. We have the hospitals, for example, and you find that despite being a doctor, but just because your status say you're refugees, you cannot be employed as a doctor. That is not fair. Inclusive planning, promoting self-reliance for the refugees, it helps to bring positive social connections within the people. Least but not least, there is also the element of school in the education sector, for example. I remember we studied under a tree separate from the host communities. And that stigmatizes a lot. It stigmatizes. Even if you acquire the highest level of education, you always look at yourself as a refugee. It's like you cannot offer the same services that a host community does. So I was wondering recently, I got a report that one of the refugees was impregnated by a host community, and I wondered how they met. Because those days, we're not allowed to integrate or to meet them. So these are some of the things that we can do to make the camps or to make these settlements better. I'm glad that so many countries have gone ahead to actually issue even the land title to the refugees. As much as you arrive in that place, you're given a land title and you're given a land to settle and even to cultivate. These are the resilience we need to happen in all these settlements places. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Grace, for sharing this powerful perspective. Just to mention that Grace is also a pilot. So being a refugee in Kakuma and having that education, but then also learning in South Africa how to fly planes. So thank you very much, Grace, for sharing those perspectives. I would like to now invite His Excellency Ambassador Traore, Permanent Secretary of the National Commission for Refugees of Burkina Faso, to the lectern. His Excellency Ambassador Traore is a career diplomat with extensive experience in international relations and policy. He previously served at the Embassy and Permanent Representative of Burkina Faso in Brussels and held senior roles in migration and reintegration policy. He currently serves as the Ambassador and Permanent Secretary of the National Commission for Refugees of Burkina Faso. Ambassador Traore is a Knight of the Order of Merit and the Knight of the Order of the Stallion of Burkina Faso. Honors awarded in 2021 and 2025 respectively. So Ambassador Traore, the question for you would be that Burkina Faso has pledged to include forcibly displaced people in local solutions as part of its broader efforts to strengthen social cohesion and resilience in those communities. Could you please guide us through Burkina Faso's approach to achieve these important goals?
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président. Et mesdames et messieurs, chers partenaires, c'est un honneur pour la délégation du Burkina Faso de participer à ce panel sur les fondations du futur inclusif et résilient. Et donc, à cette occasion, je tiens à exprimer l'engagement ferme du Burkina Faso à garantir l'inclusion effective des personnes déplacées de force par la mise en œuvre de solutions locales visant à renforcer leur résilience. Cela s'est traduit, Monsieur le Président, par la prise de l'engagement en lien avec la promotion de l'inclusion des réfugiés et des personnes déplacées internes dans l'accès aux solutions locales. À ce titre, une stratégie nationale de relèvement des personnes déplacées internes et des communautés d'accueil sur la période 2023-2027 a été adoptée par le gouvernement du Burkina Faso. La stratégie est mise en œuvre à travers un plan triennal glissant orienté sur 3 axes. Il s'agit notamment de l'amélioration de l'accès aux services sociaux de base et promotion des cadres de vie décents dans les zones de retour, d'intégration et de réinstallation. Il s'agit également de la redynamisation de l'économie locale et l'autonomisation des populations affectées, en particulier des jeunes et des femmes, et la prévention des conflits et consolidation de la paix dans les zones à fort défi sécuritaire. En outre, il faut dire qu'une politique nationale de développement est opérationnalisée depuis 2023 par le plan d'action pour la stabilisation et le développement, dont la mise en œuvre du pilier 2, à savoir répondre à la crise humanitaire, contribue naturellement à renforcer la résilience des populations vulnérables. S'agissant spécifiquement de la recherche des solutions durables locales au profit des réfugiés, je voudrais relever que le Burkina Faso a engagé le processus d'élaboration d'une stratégie d'intégration locale des réfugiés, conformément à l'un de ses sous-engagements issus du Forum mondial sur les réfugiés de 2023. À ce titre, une étude diagnostique sur l'intégration locale des réfugiés a été réalisée en 2024. Le rapport de la dite étude a été validé par les acteurs étatiques et les organisations intervenant dans la gestion des réfugiés en novembre 2025. Cela permet ainsi d'entamer l'élaboration de la stratégie, y compris son plan d'action au cours de l'année 2026. Conformément aux recommandations de l'étude, les axes d'intervention consisteront à l'amélioration du cadre juridique et institutionnel, l'inclusion des réfugiés dans les stratégies de développement, le renforcement des actions en matière d'autonomisation économique des réfugiés et d'accès aux services sociaux de base, ainsi que le renforcement de l'intégration culturelle. C'est donc l'occasion pour moi, Monsieur le Président, de lancer un appel conformément aux principes du Pacte mondial sur les réfugiés en matière de partage des responsabilités pour l'accomplissement du Burkina Faso, pour l'accompagnement plutôt du Burkina Faso dans l'élaboration de sa stratégie et le financement de son plan d'action en vue d'une autonomisation et résilience des réfugiés accueillis sur son territoire. Mesdames et messieurs, voilà quelques éléments de réponse relatifs à notre approche au Burkina Faso visant à inclure les personnes déplacées de force dans les solutions locales afin qu'elles puissent vivre de manière autonome et digne. Vive la solidarité internationale. Je vous remercie.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Traore, for sharing Burkina Faso's approach and commitment. I would now like to invite Her Excellency Ambassador Patricia Danzi, Director General of the Swiss Agency for Development and Cooperation. Ambassador Danzi has a distinguished career in international cooperation spanning over 2 decades with the ICRC and now leading Switzerland's development efforts. She has been a strong advocate for innovative, context-adapted solutions that bridge humanitarian and development approaches. The floor is yours, Gunther.
Thank you very much, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for inviting me also to speak about what Geneva does and how Geneva can contribute to the rising numbers of people forcibly displaced that pose a challenge for housing and settlement, not only from a protection point of view, but also from a technical point of view. This is true for camps, but also for urban and peri-urban settings, where an increased number of forcibly displaced live and where they want to call their house a home. Also, settlements need to be resilient to the increasingly extreme weather events like floods and drought and wind. From Mbara to Kakuma to the Gaza camps, we have seen over the last month the flooding and the drought and the wind that destroyed the lives and the livelihoods of many that have fled already. So to face this, we need new, innovative, cost-effective, and context-adapted technical solutions, co-designed by host communities and by refugees. This is why UNHCR and Switzerland have launched the Geneva Technical Hub in 2021. You may have heard about that, for sure you have, if you sit in this room. The hub brought together Swiss academia and expert practitioners to tackle technical challenges, shared learnings, and find innovative solutions that have been applied successfully in operational contexts of displaced settlements, tested by refugee communities and host communities. The hub has been hosted by the UNHCR and has developed and applied solutions. In its first phase, the hub has been engaged in the domains of disaster risk reduction. You will all remember our June event when we had the DRR event here in Geneva. It also did on energy, environmental shelter housing, advanced settlement planning, hydrogeology, water system optimizing, and sanitation. At the GRF in 2023, together with a series of other partners, we have pledged to extend the scope of the GTH and to achieve a broader support base. And since then, as the representative from Kenya said, the tune has changed, so we have to adapt with that. And after almost 2 years of intense effort, and in spite of the turbulences the humanitarian sector had to face, the UNHCR, IFRC, the Global Platform for Action on Sustainable Energy in Displaced Settings, UNICEF, IOM, the Global WASH Cluster, the ICSC, and UN Habitat have secured funding support from Switzerland, ECHO, and expert deployments from Sweden, the CGIAR, and Violina Foundation. The work of the revamped Geneva Technical Hub 2.0 will resume in January next year. It will deliver integrated multi-sectorial technical solutions for displacement affected and host communities. A key focus is on reinforcing the role of local institutions and actors in leading or co-steering technical responses, ensuring solutions are contextually grounded and locally owned. GTH partners, together with their local partners, will test, refine, and apply innovative solutions to address complex challenges in the humanitarian sector. The work includes sharing of capacities among partners, as well as peer-to-peer learning activities to strengthen local technical capacity and enabling national actors to take a leading role in sustainable humanitarian service delivery. To conclude, the Geneva Technical Hub is well placed to contribute to the success of the multi-stakeholder pledge on human settlement, and it will actively engage with its partners involved in order to ensure that successful innovations can be scaled up and that their rollout can be funded. The door for other donors and technical partners is wide open to further increase the relevance and weight of this highly valuable initiative that is fully aligned with the humanitarian reset and the UN 80 reform. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador. And we were delighted to have you at the 2023 GRF when we announced the pledge And the Geneva Technical Hub, an excellent initiative, open for journalists to join that too. I would now like to invite Mr. Kim Lu Skipstead, Executive Director of Grundfos Foundation. The Grundfos Foundation has been a leading voice in private sector engagement for displacement affected communities and has championed innovative financing models to improve sustainability in critical sectors like water. If you allow me, the question that we have for you so that the audience could know. Grundfos Foundation is our flagship private sector partner of this pledge. You support displacement affected areas like Turkana, readily contributing to refugee inclusion. You were also forward-looking when you supported the creation of Project Flow, an innovative funding mechanism to improve the sustainability of water systems, which are critical for millions of refugees and their host communities. Based on your experience, how can you engage other stakeholders to support these areas more sustainably and in line with the priorities?
Thank you so much, Your Excellencies, dear friends. There's a lot of questions, so I'll start out saying that I'm an impatient soul because I once was a member of the Danish Parliament myself, so I used to be a politician, but I was too impatient. I wanted results, and so I went to the private sector. And I've been a part of this discussion about refugee. Thank you, Grace, for presenting the new word that we should all use, refugee homes, in order to do what we can do best for the people living there, and so they have a chance to build their own destiny. Thank you so much, and that's correct. The Grundfos Foundation is very much active in building sustainable settlements with refugee homes. Providing one of the most basic needs we have as human beings, because without it we wouldn't be here, namely water. Clean and safe water for all. That's our mantra in the Grundfos Foundation, and also the company we are proud owners of Grundfos. Back in some years ago, I was visiting a refugee home, a refugee settlement in the western part of Tanzania, and I saw what water did in this particular settlement. You did 6 boreholes using solarized sustainable water systems to get the water out there, and suddenly the dynamics and the prosperity in this area changed within a few weeks because the water was clean, and you didn't need to stand in line, and you didn't need to have a fight over the water. There was water for plenty of people. That idea that it can be done, and I wanted to show the rest of the world that it could be done. And suddenly one day I had a discussion and a dialogue with UNHCR, came up with this fantastic idea of a revolving fund where you change old systems that are based on fossil fuel generators getting polluted water out of the river or trucking water into some of these refugee homes is immensely expensive, and I couldn't grasp the idea of how come we don't make long-lasting solutions in the areas where we can, and that's why we immediately supported the revolving fund to the project. Ever since I met that place and talked about it in 2023, we've created 21 water systems now in 44 countries together with the UNHCR, and we are very proud of being a founding partner of that initiative. And we are inviting others to do the same because it can be done. If we solve one of the basic needs for people is clean water and safe water, then something happens in the settlement, in a home. Something happens with the hygiene, sanitation, the education, the job opportunities, the training, the children, and so forth. So there's a lot of fantastic opportunities that can be realized, optimized if we have clean water. That's why I'm calling for others to do the same in foundations and within Europe, talk to foundations in the US, Asia, and also in Arabic countries. And everyone's saying the same. Of course, there should be plenty of water and sanitation for people living displaced, forcibly displaced, but somehow we're still lacking the commitment and the funding. But hopefully now, 2 years later, we can get that soon. The reason why we're doing this is the Grundfos company has pledged, together with the Grundfos Foundation, we want to be a part of, not doing it ourselves, because even though we have fantastic technologies and pumps, we should not do it ourselves. We can match with other competitors in the business. But it's a pledge to provide clean and safe water to 300 million people within 2035. And that pledge, we are moving in the right direction, but there's plenty way to go. It's complex and it's challenging, but I've seen it, and many of you here have probably seen it yourselves. If you get water in, or if you add water to human beings' life, something good happens. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We are proud of our partnership with Current First Foundation, Project Flow. Brilliant work going on in the field in many of these difficult locations. We now will move to our second part of the program, which is the Future Horizons, charting the path forward. This discussion will focus on next steps, new commitments, and emerging ideas that were discussed at the recently held Nairobi Deep Dive, organized by UN Habitat, World Bank, and UNHCR on sustainable human settlement. We'll play a short video capturing key insights from the deep dive, which gathered Kenya, Ethiopia, Somalia, Chad, Mauritania, and government of Mozambique, alongside with experts and partners, to explore practical solutions linked to this pledge. These will be crucial to advance the pledge forward. Let's take a look.
I'm glad that you are here this morning. Welcome you for the deep dive in sustainable human settlement in fragility, conflict, and violence context, and bring through advocacy and towns, learning and academic.
We're here to tackle some of the most complex and urgent challenges of our time. How to build sustainable, resilient, and integrated human settlement in context of fragility, conflict, and forced displacement. This strategic partnership is set to be instrumental in advancing solutions that work for displacement affected communities, and displaced people and refugees in both urban, peri-urban, and rural settings. This gathering provides a unique opportunity to reflect collectively on how cities and towns in Africa are better manage and pressure of forced displacement while building inclusive and resilience.
Camps, absolutely, no question about it. But we also know that in the long run, camps are not the best idea. We want these to be an integrated settlement international community.
Bringing everyone together here at once, we learn from each other, but then we learn about solutions from each other. How do we solve these problems?
The government of Ethiopia used to manage refugee issues in a parallel approach, but after 2016, we shifted our service into the humanitarian development and peace nexus, and it promotes inclusive, long-term development response.
We have endeavored to ensure we create an enabling environment for refugee inclusion.
We have established integrated communication balance, which is also to be constructed from the IDPs host communities and listing all the projects in the door.
Actuellement, mon pays, la Mauritanie, fait face à ce phénomène de déplacement forcé. Nous recevons beaucoup de réfugiés qui nous viennent du Mali voisin, notamment dans la région du Haut de Charpie, et particulièrement dans le département de Basse-Kounou.
Learning from Mauritania, from Somalia, Ethiopia, Mozambique, all have different models, of which are going to assist us also try to fine-tune our model in Kalobeye settlement.
We really need to get the solutions at scale that are sustainable and what we say transformative. So we don't have informality, we actually have planned urban growth. This is about development.
Nous menons une réflexion de planification sur le long terme, au moins 10 ans, pour mieux intégrer les populations dans le village et pour mieux planifier l'espace, pour mieux répondre aux besoins.
Dar uma das coisas que eu aprendi do dia de hoje é que quando estivermos a planificar atividades em áreas que acomodam esses deslocados internos, nós temos que poder também garantir que haja acesso, principalmente de serviços básicos, a todos os deslocados que se fazem nas cidades que estão implementados.
From this workshop is a willingness by the country delegations to embrace the transition from encampment to sustainable settlements.
The policy shift is the most important one, where governments are now opening up space that these can become productive community and can contribute to the economy. that's self-reliance for the refugees, but also economic opportunities for the host communities. Thank you very much. And now I'd like to invite my colleague, David Aubrey, Chief of Office for the European Union at UN Habitat. As co-lead of the Sustainable Human Settlements Pledge, UN Habitat has been instrumental in shaping the agenda of this pledge. David, over to you.
Thanks very much, Sajad. At the Global Refugee Forum in 2023, many of you pledged to move beyond camps towards sustainable human settlements. And Ethiopia, as co-lead, continues to carry this forward. Kenya, as well, as we've heard, has taken major steps with the recognition of new municipalities, including Kakuma and Dadaab, the Sharika plan. In Burkina Faso and Mali, also with the support of European Union, DG INSPAM, UNHCR, and UN Habitat and governments, work is underway to include internally displaced people in urban areas. Now, non-pledging countries are applying the same settlement logic, showing that this approach is gaining traction. Both the idea of supporting cities that are hosting displaced people, refugees, and internally displaced people, as well as, where possible, looking into changing camps into municipalities where that's feasible. Building on this momentum and the deep dive, which we just saw some highlights from, in Nairobi we brought delegates together from the World Bank, UNHCR Habitat, and 6 countries. And we found that this was a real game changer. It created the nexus we needed that linked humanitarian response with long-term development and financing strategies. It was a 5-day high-level exchange of countries sharing challenges and solutions. And from these discussions, countries produced actionable, context-specific plans covering governance, land, services, and resilience. They committed to one coherent settlement approach, replacing parallel humanitarian systems. Delegations agreed on integration from the start, as we've been hearing from some of the other speakers, including Grace. And planning and budgeting for inclusion must start early, before displacement arrives. From the outset, settlements must be in viable locations designed for inclusion. They should be led by national and local authorities with stronger local leadership and better coordination among all actors. To achieve this, countries agreed on risk-informed, spatial and data-driven planning using tools like satellite imagery, GIS, and household surveys. Early spatial diagnostics, hazard mapping, settlement typologies, and territorial analysis are essential to avoid repeating some past mistakes. Informal land arrangements need attention, so renters and the poorest households don't fall through the gaps. These analyses must feed into bankable proposals for settlement investment and upgrading. Finally, the deep dive reinforced partnerships across UN Habitat, UNHCR, the World Bank, governments, and the private sectors. Countries endorsed a shared roadmap for durable solutions, economic inclusion, and municipal capacity, aligned with the Human Settlements Pledge. They also pointed to the need for blended finance, results-based development finance, stronger municipal own-source revenue, and national transfers that reflect real population numbers. Complementing these efforts, UN Habitat's role has been to provide technical support to turn this pledge into reality. In Chad, we're working with doing spatial work in Farshana and Guerreda, models for changing refugee hosting towns as integrated urban systems. In Ethiopia, we're supporting UNHCR and RRS through spatial planning and implementing a roadmap. So looking ahead, the steps are clear. We have to deepen collaboration through follow-up missions, technical assistance programs, and learning events at regional and country program. As a pledge, we are committed to continuing these deep dives. Maybe they'll take place at the national level, maybe they'll go into deeper dives on specific issues, but we believe that this has been a good model that we can continue with. Thanks.
Thanks, David. And we also have the World Bank, important partner in this pledge with us. We could not have our World Bank colleague, Soraya Goga. She's the urban lead. She could not join us today, but there's a message that we would like to play for you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Soraya Goga, and I'm lead urban specialist at the World Bank. Apologies that I could not be there in person with you in Geneva. Today I will focus primarily on three or four key issues that I think are crucial for the next step of this particular agenda. For those of you who are interested, the World Bank has a paper on urban forced displacement, which actually recognizes the heterogeneity of refugee hosting situations from small neighborhoods to camps, and do have some suggestions on how to address these situations. You would have also have heard the feedback from our deep dive on Learning Academy on sustainable human settlements, which actually dealt with what to do with situations as they are today. For the future, however, there are three key issues that we would absolutely 100% need to address for sustainable human settlements. The first is that jobs are absolutely essential if we are looking at sustainable human settlements. And they're also essential for self-reliance of refugees. When you talk about jobs, you have to talk about the private sector. So for all of us sitting around this room, we have to think to ourselves, how do we support the private sector, whether it's in small towns which host refugees, whether it's in refugee camps themselves, or whether it is in large cities. How exactly do we support the private sector so that refugees can become business owners? Refugees can also be upskilled to actually respond as workers. Second, local governments are actually absolutely key to this particular agenda. They are often first responders. They have to deal with the situation on the ground as people come into their particular areas. You know, one of the key lessons that emerged and is emerging from some of the work that we're doing is that parallel systems do not do local governments, do not do refugees, and do not do host communities any good. So the question to us is, how do we switch from parallel systems to non-parallel systems that can also support both refugees and hosts, particularly local governments who in many instances are responsible for the provision of these particular services. This of course brings us to the sticky issue of financing. What exactly do we do with financing? I mean, if you look at issues of self-reliance, and when people actually have jobs or they actually produce or have economic activities, they can actually pay for example, user fees, taxes over time. Now, what about the national governments? You know, how can we support national governments within this system? And the question that I have to us is this something that we can think of to go through existing local government systems? Is there something that we can think of that looks at like an intergovernmental fiscal transfer to refugee hosting areas to support them in managing refugees as they come into these particular areas? For national government systems, you know, how do we actually set up the refugee response systems, and how do we finance these? You know, from our disaster risk management colleagues, we actually in the World Bank have something called a CADDO, catastrophic drawdown option, where we help governments to set up the disaster resilience response mechanisms, and then we actually finance that in the event of a disaster. Is this something we can think of as well? So what we've looked at currently, even within the deep dive, is what happens with existing camp situations, what happens with existing situations in cities and camps. I'd actually like to end on a particular question to this particular group of people sitting around the table. What do we do in the future? What would a world without camps look like for the next crisis, whether it be in Sudan or South Sudan or Bangladesh? What would it look like if we have a situation where we don't have camps in this crisis? So I put this back to you as we move along and as we plan for the next part of this work program. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Soraya. We missed you here, but Barakai, Hamid Barakai, Director General of Humanitarian Affairs at the Ministry of Social Action, Solidarity and Humanitarian Affairs of Chad. An expert in public governance, humanitarian coordination, and community resilience, he oversees national humanitarian intervention and support for vulnerable populations. Previously, he served as technical advisor to the Ministry of Economy and Planning, contributing to resilience strategies, social cohesion, policies, and crisis response plans. Chad, as we know, has upheld a remarkably generous open door policy and currently hosts 1.5 million refugees, the highest per capita rate in Africa. Given the challenges in the arid regions where they are hosted, we want to know how Chad is working to strengthen these areas and enhance resilience for both refugees and host communities.
Merci beaucoup, monsieur le modérateur. Face à la question, comment le Tchad évolue pour renforcer les zones et l'amélioration de la résilience pour les réfugiés et les communautés, je voudrais dire qu'on a fait pas mal de choses, dont certains ont été soulignés dans les vidéos, dans les interventions qui sont passées. Et nous sommes aussi toujours heureux de pouvoir participer à cette expérience ici. Autant les efforts qui ont été consentis que les défis auxquels nous sommes confrontés actuellement. À juste titre, vous avez rappelé qu'on accueille aujourd'hui plus d'1,5 million de réfugiés. Si on prend en compte les autres réfugiés qui sont dans les territoires, on a presque à 2 millions de réfugiés. Et assez tôt, le Tchad a essayé de pouvoir intégrer, concilier les réponses humanitaires avec les réponses de développement. D'abord en élaborant un plan national de réponse à l'Est, mais aussi en essayant d'intégrer la question de la vulnérabilité des réfugiés dans le plan national de développement qui a été validé cette année et qui est viable jusqu'à 2030. Nous avons aussi mis en place un certain nombre de mesures qui permettaient de créer des environnements propices pour pouvoir faciliter l'inclusion de ces réfugiés. Et on est en train aussi de travailler sur la mise en place d'une politique nationale de protection sociale inspirée un peu sur le modèle de nos confrères mauritaniens. Et donc aujourd'hui, nous avons un registre national unifié qui regroupe à peu près 900 000 personnes vulnérables. Mais on essaye d'étendre ces registres-là à l'échelle nationale à travers un projet de filets sociaux adaptatifs et productifs sur lequel on est en train de travailler, financé à hauteur de 120 millions d'euros, 120 millions de dollars par l'appui de la Banque mondiale. Donc sur ces sujets, on travaille beaucoup avec nos partenaires BACR ou bien d'autres, mais ce qui est sûr, c'est que la gestion des réfugiés pèse énormément sur le poids. En termes de politique nationale, mais aussi sur nos capacités à pouvoir faire face aux besoins assez importants de ces réfugiés. Nous sommes aussi dans une phase essentielle de notre politique nationale en termes de décentralisation. Et tout le travail qu'on est en train de faire, c'est aussi d'essayer de voir dans quelle mesure nos institutions au niveau de province et de concentrés pourraient prendre en compte la question des réfugiés dans leur planification. Et donc, vous avez montré la vidéo des activités en Nairobi récemment. Et donc, nous engageons un certain nombre de travail avec le Habitat, avec la Banque mondiale, pour pouvoir aussi comment nous pouvons intégrer les camps qui sont viables sur notre aménagement territorial. Cependant, nous avons aussi des camps qui ne peuvent pas être intégrés puisqu'ils étaient éloignés des zones d'habitation et des zones de communauté. Et face à ça, nous sommes en train aussi de réfléchir sur un changement de paradigme pour voir comment aussi répartir les réfugiés dans une approche hors camp. Donc, ce sont tous ces efforts qu'on essaie de déployer. Le Tchad est dans une phase aussi de transition de ces réflexions pour pouvoir aussi proposer une mesure qui est assez viable dans ce sens-là. Et donc, je finis en appelant aussi à la solidarité, à la responsabilité collective, parce que c'est aussi une responsabilité collective de la question des réfugiés. Et on demande les uns et les autres à pouvoir aussi renforcer leur appui au gouvernement tchadien pour pouvoir nous permettre aussi de supporter ces défis. Parce que tout le monde ici sait qu'on ne peut pas envoyer tous ces 1,5 million de personnes dans un autre pays, donc nous devons les localiser, nous devons créer les conditions juridiques pour ça, et aujourd'hui on travaille pour pouvoir faciliter leur inclusion. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you, Mr. Barakai, for sharing Chad's remarkable efforts with the most difficult situation and the way you're managing and strengthening resilience is really remarkable to know. We now turn to Rwanda, to Mr. Aristark Ngoga, Permanent Secretary at the Ministry of in charge of Emergency Management. With extensive experience in humanitarian work, disaster risk management, and policy development, he has led key leadership roles addressing emergencies and resilience. And for Rwanda, has shared its vision to enhance the living conditions of displaced communities by moving from camps towards more integrated and sustainable settlements. Could you please tell us more about the opportunities this approach creates for social inclusion, economic development, and long-term resilience?
Thank you very much, moderator, and thank you for UNICEF for inviting us, especially to share our experience in this panel. I'd like to start by saying that in Rwanda, 10% of refugees are living in urban areas. You can understand that 90% of refugees are living in refugee camps. However, though they are in refugee camps, they are free to move, they are free to go in communities, to get work opportunities and so on. Recently, I think it is 2024 that Rwanda, during the expo, announced that we are exploring the opportunity to turn refugee camps into integrated settlements. In this regard, Rwanda's aspiration for refugee human settlements is to make current refugee settings into inclusive, integrated, and sustainable settlements. We aim to move beyond the traditional camp models to settlements where refugees are fully participants in local economies and communities, with access to housing, services, livelihoods, infrastructure, while also ensuring environmental and social sustainability. We believe that this transition will be progressive and pragmatic, having achieved strong inclusion of refugees in the national education system, the right to work, job opportunities, access to finance, universal health care for refugees, and refugee inclusion into different national systems. If I can give an example, we are using the World Bank support to connect one refugee camp, which was in a remote area, to the city. It is in Western Province, having a tarmac road that will connect the camp to the city, creating work opportunities, easy the transport, and so on. Looking ahead, we are exploring the possibility to see how, in the coming years, the refugee hosting area will no longer be perceived as camps, but as thriving integrated settlements, economically active, connected to local markets, and contributing to district development. These settlements will drive local growth and stand a concrete example of how inclusion strengthens both refugees and the host community. We are glad to have been in this GRF. We learned a lot from other countries that have already experienced this integrated settlement. Such transition holds significant potential to enhance long-term solutions for refugees, and to achieve this, we intend to involve refugees in a local planning framework, enhance self-reliance of refugees, environmental sustainability. As I conclude, I'd like to say that Rwanda believes that sustainable, integrated, and human settlements are both viable solutions for refugees and contribute to development and cohesion as well as environmental resilience. I thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Ngoga, for sharing Rwanda's vision and the opportunities you're creating there. I would now like to invite Ambassador Solomon Ehe, Permanent Representative of Cameroon to the United Nations Office in Geneva. Ambassador Ehe is a distinguished diplomat and scholar. He has served in senior roles, including Director of the International Relations Institute of Cameroon, advisor to the President, Head of Legal and Treaties at the Ministry of External Relations. Ambassador, just to frame the questions for audience as well, how can the transformation of Myanmar camp in Cameroon serve as a model for transitioning from emergency response to sustainable inclusive human settlements that strengthen resilience?
Thank you, dear moderator, and thank you for inviting me in this relevant exchange on human settlement as foundation for inclusive and resilient future. Allow me to speak in French to answer your question. Au Cameroun, pays hôte d'un demi-million de réfugiés, compte à date sur son sol 5 sites et un camp de réfugiés plus connu sous l'appellation du camp de Nanao. Ce camp regroupe essentiellement des ressortissants nigériens réfugiés au Cameroun, suite aux exactions perpétrées dans leur localité d'origine par le groupe terroriste Boko Haram. Initialement conçu pour accueillir 25 000 personnes, le camp abrite aujourd'hui 85 000 personnes. Cette situation de surpopulation, amplifiée par la pérennisation de leur présence au Cameroun et la réduction des fonds alloués aux partenaires humanitaires, a généré un défi saillant lié à leur prise en charge alimentaire. À cet égard, le Cameroun a progressivement défini et implémenté plusieurs initiatives visant l'autosubsistance et plus largement l'autonomisation et l'inclusion de ces populations vulnérables, tout en les convertissant en acteurs de développement local. En ce sens, les réfugiés du camp de Mindanao ont bénéficié des terres arabes relevant du domaine national, plus d'une superficie de 100 hectares, dont 5 000 mètres carrés affectés à 200 ménages de réfugiés, 50 réservés aux communautés hôtes aux fins d'exploitation agricole. Renforçant cette démarche, l'État du Cameroun et ses partenaires ont également fourni aux populations gratifiées sous forme d'appui financier, enveloppe, des appuis multiformes en termes d'accompagnement technique et de fourniture en matériel et intrants agricoles. Outre cette initiative, le Cameroun, en partenariat avec l'Union européenne et l'OICR, ont conduit une étude visant à identifier des solutions en faveur du désengorgement du camp de Mindanao et du développement de la localité et de la région habitant le camp. Plus concrètement, ces solutions consistent essentiellement à maintenir au sein du camp les réfugiés les plus vulnérables, orienter les ménages des réfugiés et des communautés hôtes en quête de terres agricoles vers des villages de proximité. Les plus jeunes, en ce qui concerne, sont appelés à être dirigés vers les structures de formation socio-professionnelle. Renforcer également l'autonomie des populations cibles par le commerce et l'artisanat. Ces solutions, monsieur le modérateur, chers participants, sont en cours de maturation et sont appelées à guider les initiatives futures du Cameroun en vue de transformation progressive, le cas échéant du camp de Mindanao et des localités aux alentours, en un pôle agricole, commercial, urbain et écologique. Je vous remercie.
Thank you, Ambassador. Thank you very much for sharing your perspectives. We now turn to Mr. Abdoulaye Gaba, President of the Association of Regions of Mali and President of the Region Council of Mopti. With over 3 decades of experience in territorial governance and social development, he is a strong advocate for democratic governance and the role of local authorities in addressing displacement and vulnerability. Mr. Maiga has worked extensively with national institutions, UN agencies, and international partners to advance resilience, youth, empowerment, and inclusive development. Just to frame the questions, we would like to hear from Mr. Maiga the perspectives, how can regional authorities play a transformative role in advancing sustainable human settlement?
Merci infiniment, monsieur le modérateur. Mesdames et messieurs, bonjour. D'abord, je remercie au nom de la région du Mali, l'association des régions du monde, l'Union des collectivités territoriales, ceux qui ont bien voulu m'inviter à cette tribune. Je voudrais rappeler, monsieur le modérateur, que les collectivités territoriales sont des acteurs politiques Ceci est d'autant plus net qu'elle porte chaque jour la responsabilité d'assurer la cohésion, la protection et l'inclusion dans des contextes marqués par des déplacements croissants. Mesdames et messieurs, la proximité est notre force. Comprenons les besoins réels des populations, déplacées comme autres. Et nous agissons à travers la planification territoriale et la fourniture de services essentiels. Les établissements humains durables, pour répondre à votre question, nécessitent une approche intégrée, fondée sur 6 axes. 1. Urbanisme et gouvernance territoriale adaptée aux réalités locales et régionales. 2. Logement et abri pleinement connectés aux services essentiels. 3. Services publics de base, eau, assainissement, santé, éducation, mobilité, considérés comme des infrastructures de résilience. Gouvernance régionale inclusive fondée sur la participation communautaire. Financement territorial prévisible et accessible. Et enfin, durabilité environnementale intégrée à toute décision territoriale. La transition des camps vers des établissements humains durables n'est réaliste que si les gouvernements locaux et régionaux sont impliqués dès le départ. Sans leur leadership, les solutions restent fragmentées ou insoutenables. Dès lors, il est crucial d'éviter les systèmes parallèles. Les réponses doivent renforcer les dispositifs publics existants et bénéficier autant aux communautés fortes qu'aux personnes déplacées. Nous rappelons l'importance que les gouvernements locaux et régionaux soient pleinement intégrés dans les mécanismes internationaux de planification, de coordination et de financement liés aux établissements humains durables. Mesdames et messieurs, distingués participants, les collectivités locales et régionales peuvent être des moteurs de solutions que si 3 conditions sont réunies. 1. Si leurs capacités sont renforcées. 2. Si leur rôle politique est reconnu. Et enfin, si les financements internationaux parviennent réellement au territoire. C'est pourquoi, pour terminer, nous disons que les solutions durables exigent une approche territoriale inclusive et centrée sur les services publics qui constituent des véritables infrastructures de résilience, de la dignité et de la coexistence pacifique. Je vous remercie.
Thank you very much, Dr. for this excellent intervention that Mali is doing and going through. With that, we conclude the panel, but we would like to have a colleague from BMZ, Dr. Tanya from the Special Initiative, to make an intervention from the floor.
Thank you very much for welcoming me. But first of all, on a personal note, Germany is the 3rd largest refugee hosting nation worldwide. And I'm just really impressed to see all the other hosting nations on the panel and in the room. And I'm also sorry, Hamid Bakai, I have to mention you specifically because 2 weeks ago we were in the government negotiations and I had the chance of traveling to the eastern part of Chad. And I'm just really impressed by the commitment of your country and the way how you drive the nexus together with the UN organizations and with all the partners. So now I have to become a little bit more looking into my notes because my delegation also looks what I'm actually saying. So Germany remains strongly committed to the pledges made under the GRF 2023 multi-stakeholder pledge on human settlement. And my boss is right now not here. That's why Sajjad had to refer to me as Tanya. because she is currently in the plenary and she announces a topping up of our pledge to Ethiopia with the Makatet plan, to Kenya with Sharika and other partners. Transforming refugee camps into human settlements is at the core of sustainable development. I think we all agree. It shapes how people, refugees, and host communities live, access services, and participate in economic life. In the course of the pledge implementation, Germany has continuously supported WASH infrastructure and the transformation from refugee camps into urban settlements in Ethiopia and in other countries in Eastern Africa. We support the implementation of the Sharika plan in Kenya by strengthening the Kenyan administrative bodies responsible, as well as via measures to enhance job market integration and to improve energy access for displaced and host populations alike. By supporting the improvement of water and energy infrastructure in displacement settings, Germany aims to support the gradual transition from humanitarian to national services. Participation matters, and solutions are oftentimes to be found locally. Therefore, Germany promotes community-driven planning to ensure solutions which reflect local needs and foster social cohesion. Seconded advisors, such as that to Dadaab municipality in Kenya, work together with UN Habitat and other actors to support the transition from camp settings to local human settlements. And I really applaud Kenya that you're going this way. We just saw the movie from the Cities and Towns Learning Academy in Nairobi in December this year, jointly facilitated by World Bank, UN Habitat, and UNHCR, where leaders from Kenya, Ethiopia, Somalia, Mozambique, Chad, and Mauritania explored how municipalities can plan inclusively in displacement contexts. Germany, through the GIZ, which is also present here in the room, presented its urban inclusion approach, linking refugee and host communities. As a first step, this new approach will be tested in a pilot in Dadaab municipality in Kenya with UN Habitat, the World Bank, and UNHCR as partners. We will explore new ways of integrated urban planning and local service delivery. Economic inclusion is a key parameter for a thriving human settlement. Together with like-minded national governments who are all present here in this room, Germany supports innovation labs to co-create solutions to local economic inclusion needs, for example, in Ethiopia. However, freedom of movement and the right to work are essential elements of these approaches that hosting states must pursue themselves. Our goal is human settlements that are safe, inclusive, and resilient, which enable people not only to live, but to thrive. And Germany is really looking forward to deepening our partnerships with all of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Germany, always strong supporter for the work that we have been doing. Very quickly, some brief remarks to conclude this excellent panel, such rich discussions. I think a few takeaways, if I could just summarize. Refugees have skills, avoid parallel systems, inclusive approaches. It's important that as we move forward with this resilient human settlement, that hosting governments are embracing this vision. We can see that a number of governments are taking this on. Donor commitments are there. We've seen a lot of support in the room as well, also in the discussions that we had in Nairobi and elsewhere. And private sector partners are stepping in. We really find that it's a very crucial way forward to take it forward. Some key messages: local leadership matters. Temporariness should be exception. It should be avoided. Yes, camps save lives, but we need to look into longer-term resilient settlements that take into account both refugees and host communities. Financing, governance, and inclusive planning. We saw in a number of countries in Nairobi as well as here that governments are beginning to have more longer-term plans rather than short-term 6-month plan each. That they're taking the capacities of the host communities, the skills that refugees bring, the knowledge that they are bringing, the know-how that is there, and the local facilities that are available to reinforce that rather than creating parallel systems. Climate resilience is an essential component. We have seen in many operations that these are vulnerable settlements which require approach that is more climate resilient, that can take on the shocks that are there. And in some of these places, these settlements, which were planned for months, last for years, sometimes for decades. And then data, technology, innovation must drive decisions. What next? We have seen commitments around this pledge. We are now around 53 pledges. The momentum is building. Scale up at the country level is the message, that we need to work more at the country level. That's what the message also came from the deep dive. Expand partnerships and embed sustainability from the start. We work towards these commitments, and as we go for the next Global Refugee Forum in 2027, we would like to see more concrete evidence showing from these commitments that we can translate that into reality. Thank you very much for all your help, your support. We'll continue working in that direction. Thank you very much. And so one last announcement which Kenya asked me to do is that Kenya will be hosting the Africa Urban Forum next year, and they extend an invitation on behalf of Kenya. I'm extending an invitation on behalf of Kenya. Please join them.